Like-minded people.
The culture, the craft, the conversation. Welcome to Like-Minded People, the podcast. I'm Fokus, a drum and bass artist with over 25 years of experience in the underground music scene. But more importantly, I'm a huge fan of MCs. This podcast takes a deep dive into the fascinating world of MCs from across the musical spectrum, hitting it from all angles, discussions, interviews, freestyles, and more. So if you share my love for MCs, or you're curious and want to find out more, you're in exactly the right place. Shout out to all my like-minded people locked in. Back for another episode. Trust me, I am buzzing for this one. Feel like a kid in a sweet shop because today's episode is all about pirate radio. So, do you know what? No messing about. Let's get into it. Well, hold on. Actually, firstly, big ups to everyone that's been listening to the last couple of episodes. I want to make this interactive. So please do reach out to me. You can email me, hello@mikemindedpeople.com. You can hit me up on Instagram @MikeMindedPeople. And you can, of course, like whatever platform that you're listening in from, then you can leave comments and do it that way. But I want to hear from you. All the topics that I'm talking about, what are your thoughts? What are your views? What are your experiences? Are there things that you would like me to be talking about? And who would you like me to be talking to? There are going to be lots of interviews and guests coming up very, very soon. So, yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out. I want to make this interactive. I'm going to be working on different ways to connect with me in the near future. But for now, email, DM, leave a comment. And, yeah, that would be sick. Let's build this into a bit of a community. So, yeah, like I said, boom, straight into it. Pirate radio. Most importantly, I want to talk about pirate radio and why it's so important to MC culture and the role that it plays, has played, and continues to play really in MC culture. Now, first things first, we need to go back a little bit. I'm not a historian, right? I've not gone and researched and studied this specifically for the podcast. This is completely unscripted. It's just me sitting in my studio talking to myself, basically. So I'm going to break down what I understand the origins of pirate radio to be. Again, like I just said, if you have any comments around this, I'd love to hear from you because there might be things that I miss out, things that I've not got quite right. But I'm really not interested in like spending hours researching stuff and then editing the podcast and did I get that bit right? I'm just talking. So please do reach out and like help me fill in the blanks. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying I'm an expert here. I'm a fan. This is coming from a place of passion and excitement, and I'm just a fan. So anyway, pirate radio, I feel like I want to say goes back to around about the 1950s maybe. I remember reading a book recently and it was talking about how... So, okay, sorry, one thing I should say. Pirate radio is a British thing. I'm pretty certain that statement is correct. This is something that really came out of what was going on in Great Britain. And I feel like I'm just going to go with it. Let's say some point in the 1950s. Radio in Britain at that point was nationalised. It was a national thing. So I suppose that means it was controlled by the government, right? And therefore, the programming and what people heard was kind of centralised. So to go on the radio, to broadcast, you had to have some kind of licence. You couldn't just start broadcasting. So pirate radio really came about when people decided to go offshore. Because from what I understand, again, when you went into like international waters maybe, or literally went out on a boat into the sea, at a certain point, you were no longer bound by some of these restrictions. So you had stations, radio stations like Radio Luxembourg, Radio Caroline. They're the two that really spring to mind. And of course, they're called pirate radio because these are people in ships in the sea, like pirates of the airwaves, broadcasting, and people on the mainland could pick this up. Now, I'm not entirely sure what they were playing at the time, what kind of music or programming, what they were talking about. But the essence was this was for the people. This was not coming from the government or the state. This was citizens, private people doing broadcasts about stuff that they wanted people to hear, right? So I'm sure there was music and talk. So that's kind of like the essence of why it's called pirate radio. And then obviously you fast forward X amount of years, and now there's pirate radio stations that are on the mainland coming out from the inner cities, and there were lots of stations, not that I can remember what they were called off the top of my head. All the ones that are fresh in my mind we'll get to in a sec. But there were lots of stations playing funk, rare groove, reggae. You know, you hear all these amazing stories, don't you, of people that in the 60s into the 70s, I guess, where you could like nudge the dial and there'd be a different station every nudge. Sounds of reggae, rare groove, all this amazing music coming out of, I feel like it's coming out of London. Again, like if you're a listener and you're based in up north in the UK or further down south or in Scotland, or you're from outside of the UK, how did this pirate radio thing work where you're from? But I do feel like it's a British thing almost. So yeah, you had these different stations playing all this music, but it's still illegal, right? Even though they're now doing it from studios, and I guess like the studios, well, they would have been from like blocks of flats or little offices somewhere, or the back of like an industrial building, warehouse on an industrial estate or something like that. But you've got these people broadcasting illegally. And at some point, now one of these stations was Kiss FM. Kiss FM started off as a pirate. So you could say Kiss is one of like the original or very, very long-standing foundation pirate stations. I guess by this point, as you get into the 80s, and again, like don't quote me on this because I don't have the timelines in front of me, but I think in the 80s at some point, you know, Kiss is broadcasting, so I guess they're playing like soul music, the back end of like disco, going into early house maybe, early hip-hop. I think there are DJs like Trevor Nelson on there. I mean, the original, I don't know, when Kiss was illegal, I'm not entirely sure who the original DJs were. So again, let me know. I know Trevor Nelson was on there at some point. Was Westwood on there at some point? Not entirely sure. But yeah, Kiss became the first pirate station to end up getting a broadcasting license. So something happened around this time that the landscape of broadcasting was changing, and the government essentially, you know, the powers that be decided we're going to give some licenses. And I remember hearing the people from, what's the guy's name? Gordon someone, I think. The people from the sort of founders of Kiss FM talking about this, really, really interested in this whole thing, in this backdrop. But yeah, he was basically saying that all the stations had to come off air. If you wanted to go legit, you had to come off air, put your application in to get a license, and then they were going to decide who gets the license and all the rest of it. So from what I remember, Kiss came off air. Not every single station did, but Kiss did. And then they got the broadcasting license. So Kiss is, again, I think the original first kind of legal station, a pirate that became legal in the UK. And obviously Kiss FM is still around now, but it's a very different beast. It's like a big conglomerate station, isn't it, really? Lots of different franchises. Well, it is a highly commercial station. It's a business that covers lots of different music, but it's a big beast of a commercial station. But yeah, anyway, suffice for the picture that I'm trying to paint here is just like the origins of pirates. So Kiss became legal. Now, as things move towards that kind of late 80s era, I feel like 1988 is significant, where acid house was getting introduced into the UK. The house scene and the techno scene in like Chicago and Detroit in the States was kind of bringing this music into the UK, and it was having a big impact in terms of what then became acid house in the late 80s. And you then had other pirate stations. I mean, the big one at the time that people, this is before my time, by the way, but just being a fan of rave culture, right? People will quote Centreforce as being an incredibly important pirate station. Now, Centreforce came out of, it's funny enough, you can trace its roots back to the ICF, which was the sort of like football hooligan division of West Ham. So around that time, football hooliganism was like a big thing in the late 80s. But as the rave scene, the acid house rave scene came about, people started taking E's, and you had this like Love Dove generation, Second Summer of Love kind of thing. Now, there's all these amazing stories about the people that were the football hooligans fighting on the terraces one day, and then the next day they're standing in a big warehouse rave, hugging each other and dancing together. And I mean, look, that whole thing fascinates me, and I think I did possibly touch on it in the last podcast. If I could get a time machine, go back to any era, it would be that. Parties like Genesis, Biology, Sunrise, Energy, they just sound absolutely amazing. But anyway, Centreforce was born out of that. And that was and again, Centreforce is still around today. It's now broadcast, I believe, on DAB and on the internet. So a lot of the stations now that are around, including like Kool FM and Rinse FM, which we'll get to, they've got their roots in pirate radio, and they've gone on to like carry things forward, get licenses, and become amazing stations in their own right that are now broadcasting legally via the internet, via their own apps on DAB and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, Centreforce introduced that rave sound that was happening in the UK at the time via its pirate station, broadcasting that to the people. Now, what happened between like 88 and the early 90s, I'm not quite sure. It's not on the tip of my tongue like some of the other stations, but I know at some point you had other stations like Defection and Weekend Rush, and they were kind of like the precursor to Kool FM, essentially. I think Kool FM started in the early 90s. Again, timeline's a little bit hazy. So you had all these other stations going on in London. What was happening outside of London at this time, not entirely sure. I'm sure there must have been things going on in like Manchester and stuff, right? And some of the other big cities in the Midlands probably. But I feel like this story here is quite London centric. So I know Weekend Rush, two of the MCs that come to mind. Sorry, let me stop myself. Before this point, I feel like the MC's role in pirate radio was not much more than almost like, a host, an announcer. If they even had MCs, I know there were MCs on these stations, but they were probably more there to read the shouts out. Because to anyone that's not really familiar with the setup on a pirate radio, this is being broadcast probably from a dingy little flat at the top of a tower block. Decks are set up on the kitchen, next to the kitchen sink, or on an ironing board, or on the sideboard, or something like that. Could be in a squat, for instance, or a disused building. It's nothing glamorous, right? Doors could be bolted up, and people might have even broken into some of these premises in order to broadcast from there. But yeah, it's in a flat, let's say, and there's a phone line. So people that are listening, that are tuned in, can send messages through to the phone lines, or even, was there mobile phones then? There must have been. But they can call through to the studio, and people would take their shout outs. I remember like the days of pagers, right? You could hit the station up via a pager. But however it was being done, you could send your shout, big up your crew, maybe even like request a tune or something. You could do that to the station direct. You'd be getting through to someone answering the phone, maybe who's in the studio. So I feel like the MC's role was more one of reading or doing the shout outs, maybe answering the phone. And of course, like in the earlier days, in this kind of like 80s into early 90s, like giving out information about the raves, because a lot of the raves that were taking place at that point, these big, amazing, like legendary illegal raves, before everything kind of got locked off and brought inside, like back indoors into the clubs. These big illegal parties where people would phone up and they'd be told where the location was, maybe meet somewhere at a service station to like follow a convoy around the M25 to go off to some random location in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, I guess the MC from the pirate radio angle would be there to maybe like give out information about the parties, or give out phone line numbers, or possibly information about meeting points. But I feel like the MC at this point isn't there to spit lyrics. And maybe that's just also to do with the nature of the music. If it's more kind of like acid house music based, whilst there were obviously MCs involved in that scene, it was not really a lyrical thing at this point. I think the MC culture was still in its infancy, and it was still kind of building, certainly in relation to this pirate radio kind of perspective that I'm looking at it through today. So yeah, anyway, get back to, so you've got stations like Defection, into Weekend Rush, and what I was saying was that Weekend Rush, I'm pretty certain that a very, very young Shabba was on those stations. I think I was speaking to DJ Storm last week. I had the pleasure of being on Kool FM with DJ Storm, and we had a conversation after the show. And she was telling me, I'm pretty certain she was saying that she was on Defection, and then Defection became Weekend Rush. As you get with a lot of these things, right? People end up going their separate ways, and one station branches out and maybe becomes a different station, is kind of, born from it. But I think she was saying that Weekend Rush was born out of Defection. But yeah, she was certainly saying that a young Shabba would be on there. And even, how mad is this? Like in the very, very early days of Chemistry and Storm, Goldie would be on the mic playing the role of their MC and giving the shouts and all this kind of thing. So yeah, Shabba and Fearless. I know Fearless was involved in Weekend Rush, and these are sets that I've not really been able to track down. So if any connoisseurs out there have sets of Defection and Weekend Rush, I can't really seem to find a huge amount of stuff on YouTube, especially ones featuring, a young MC Fearless, a young Shabba. I would love to hear it. I'd be fascinated to hear that. Now, at some point in the early 90s, is it 93? Stand corrected. I know, like, the reason I keep saying, like, stand corrected is that I know that people, and rightly so, understandably so, people get very, very passionate about these different eras, because if you were around at this point in time, then it's probably like the most amazing time of your life, probably, right? I'm sure it would have been if I'd have been out in raving in the late 80s, early 90s. Is that golden, whatever your golden age is, obviously it's steeped in nostalgia, but it's also quite an emotional time, and you're almost quite protective over it, aren't you? I get that. So people might be listening to this going, that didn't happen in this, that he's got the year wrong or whatever. So yeah, that's just that's the reason I'm putting in these little caveats, because I respect this stuff. Do you know what I mean? But equally, I'm just talking, man. I'm just talking as a fan and someone who has a deep respect and value for these different eras. So early 90s, 93, Kool FM is born. Now, the reason I feel that Kool FM is the most significant station in the world, and I'm going on record saying that, this is my opinion, right? But I'm definitely not alone in thinking this. Kool FM's the original pirate station, the most important station in the world for launching the multiple MC element into pirate radio. And obviously that's so integral to MC culture. So, like I sort of touched on last time, in and around like the 70s and through the 80s, obviously sound systems, reggae and dancehall sound systems, blues parties, all this kind of thing was a big, big part of UK music culture, right? And when Kool FM started, the MCs that were, the pioneers of jungle MCing were essentially from that kind of dancehall sound system side of things. So MCs such as Navigator, you had Moose, the Ragga Twins, Demon and Flinty. Man, my mind's just gone blank now. There's so many more. 5-0, all of these people were coming from that sound system angle. So when you listen to these early recordings of Kool FM, that's kind of what you hear. The MC style there is that toasting vibe with a little sprinkle of lyrics and just weaving in and out of the jungle. And there's something so special. Like, it makes me so gassed when I listen back to the early Kool FM sets, 94, 95. There is some real magic there. By the way, like a fantastic, what's the word? Can't think of the word now. A fantastic reference point for all of this music is just jump on YouTube and go to Take Me Back Pirate Radio Archives. Big up you lot. Whoever runs that, you have done an amazing job of documenting the journey of pirate radio, because it is fantastic. There is every set imaginable on there, from jungle into the garage into the grime, drum and bass. It's amazing. So yeah, Take Me Back Pirate Radio Archives. If you've never been on there on YouTube, you are missing out, trust me. So for this kind of section that I'm talking about here, the real, I don't know, man, I feel like I want to say the introduction of MC culture into pirate radio. You need to go find these sets. I would just say jump on Pirate Radio Archives and type in things like DJ Ron and SL, Pressure X, Younghead with Navigator, Ragga Twins, 5-0. Obviously, there's Brocky and Det. That era there is something super special, amazing. And then the reason, like I was saying, that Kool is so important is because you've got sets where there's 3, 4, 5 MCs in a room, in the studio, passing the mic hand to hand to hand. I mean, I was literally listening to a set just on the way back from the gym this morning. It is the Younghead, Pressure X set, Ragga Twins and Navigator. Oh, mate, it's so good. There's a bit where, I can't remember which one of the Ragga Twins it is, but one of the Ragga Twins, possibly Demon, going back to back with Navigator, and they're just doing that sick, like, sound system vibe, call and response, 4 bars each, just off the head top, just flowing with it. And yeah, that multiple MC thing, like Kool FM, man, that's what they brought to the airwaves. And then you can just like map out how it all rolled out from there, right? By 95, Skibber's coming much more into the mix. Skibbity, obviously Shabba, and I'm sure like he was probably in the background earlier than that. Shabba was certainly already on pirate radio, then he was on Kool, and all these other fantastic MCs that come into the melting pot. IC3, Riddler. I mean, I know I'm not alone in saying this. Riddler was an absolute don of pirate radio. What happened to Riddler? In about 99, that kind of 98, 99 era, Riddler was killing it. Sick flow, sick voice. Yeah, not sure what happened to Riddler, man. So if anyone can answer that question for me, or if Riddler, if you're out there and by some way you hear this podcast, then please hit me up. I'd love to speak to Riddler and more about this whole pirate radio era and MC culture. But yeah, Kool just had this amazing melting pot of MCs. And really, I feel like it kind of set the blueprint and it went from there. Now, what year are we kind of in? I don't know what year we're in. I'm just kind of going with the flow here. But around this time, obviously, it wasn't just Kool FM that was on air with MCs on their station. You also had Rude FM. At the moment, I'm talking a bit, the jungle into the drum and bass era. But like I've said from the start, Mic-Minded People is not just about any particular genre. So stick with me, and I'm kind of ducking and diving into different genres. But just in order to keep my chain of thought, I'm kind of sticking with the jungle D&B bit for now. So you had Rude FM. Now, Rude FM was another station where Kool was sort of based in and around that sort of East London bit. Like it was mainly associated with Hackney, in and around that kind of Hackney, Dalston area. Rude FM is a station born out of North London. And again, these stations like 30, 35 years later, these stations are still going. So big up all the Rude FM crew as well. And Rude had MCs. I mean, look, Too Shy was one. As far as I'm concerned, Too Shy was one of the original sort of Rude FM MCs. I'm pretty certain that you'd have heard Rage on there at some point. MC System was on there. Who's a good friend of mine. So big up man like System. And whatever happened behind the scenes happened. And Rude, some of the people that were on the original Rude FM, which I think was 88.2, Rude FM 88.2, I'm sure that's right. There was a little split, and Rude Awakening was born. Was Rude Awakening 1043, 104.3 FM? Even just saying these frequencies, it gives me that little buzz of, it's just something so special about it. 1043, it's got to be, right? So yeah, Rude Awakening was born, and they spelt it R-W, as in R-U-U-D, Rude Awakening, spelt like that. And then that's really where X-Man and Herbsy came to prominence. X-Man and Herbsy and Chillum on Rude Awakening. Again, there's some next level stuff. So obviously by now, in this era, I don't know what year Rude Awakening was formed, but by now sort of jungle was kind of merged more into drum and bass. And the sort of stuff that DJs like Chillum were playing, just sick, like bit techie, kind of techie, rollers, but just a proper underground edge to it. So again, jump on YouTube and just search up these sets. Chillum, X-Man and Herbsy, the Rude Awakening sets are fantastic. And you had a whole heap of other MCs on there. Blacker, Mojo, again, now I'm putting myself on the spot. My memory's just gone blank. But, you know, there was more MCs on there than X-Man and Herbsy. But obviously they went on to arguably become sort of the most famous ones from it and blow up in the rave scene and everything else. So the tapes that were getting passed around, because this is the one of the really important bits. This isn't meant to be, like I said, just a history of pirate radio, just name checking all these different stations. What I want to capture here is that the essence of pirate radio. There are so many different little components to it, but a big part of it was people getting the tapes. Tapes were like currency. Who can and again, whilst all of this stuff is now documented online and like I said, like amazing archives on YouTube, at the time there was none of that stuff. So the TDK D90 or C90 tape was currency. So whoever could get hold of a recording of one of these sets, and then they bring it into school or college or whatever, like a Monday morning, I've got the latest tape of like Profile with Skibber and Shabba, or I've got the Chillum and X-Man, or whatever it was. These tapes were currency. And it's so exciting because when you listen to these sets, you've got the crackle, like, obviously they're going out on the FM dial. This is way before digital radio. So people are doing like makeshift aerials in order to pick up these stations. So if you lived in London, you know, depending on what area of London and the range of the station, all of the things that depended on the size of the transmitter they were using and all this kind of techie stuff. But it depended where you were, location-wise, if you could pick up certain stations and how well you could pick up the station. So with these tapes, you get a bit of interference where it drifts out a little bit and you get that kind of fuzzy crackling sound, and it comes back in. But that just made the tapes even better. Now, some of these London stations, you know, where I'm from, I grew up in Hitchin in Hertfordshire. It's not that far. It's kind of on the fringe of North London, I suppose. Certainly not that far away. So you could drive to... I didn't do this, but I know people that you could drive to a certain place on the top of a hill or something like that, and you could have your tape recorder, and you might be able to pick up Kool or Rude or whatever and get the recording and get the tape. So these tapes were definitely passed around. And this is where you get to hear your favourite MCs flexing out. And for me, it's always been about the MC. Whether it's pirate radio, whether it was tape packs, or whatever it was back in the day, I wanted to hear the MC. Yeah, of course, like the DJ's the one that plays the music, but I was less interested in who was on the decks. And I just craved, who's got the tape with Stevie Hyper on it? Who's got the tape with Juice Man? Who's got the Skibber and Shabba tape? Because that's what I wanted to hear. And passing around tapes of pirate radio was so important for MCs to build up their following. Because like I said, there was no social media. And really, I mean, think about it. Let's just say, you know, when I was at school, let's just say it was like 97, I was probably like getting really into pirate radio. I'd heard of some of these people, but I'd never seen them. Unless you picked up like a a magazine, like there was these sort of rave magazines, or maybe you went to a rave, obviously, and you saw them on stage, that was the only way you're going to know who is who. So you're listening to these tapes and Skibber's coming on, Shabba's coming on, you're hearing their lyrics, their tone of voice, but you don't know what they look like. So it almost added to the mystique. Like, who are these people? It just felt so underground, and that's really special. And obviously in this day and age, that everything's pros and cons, isn't it? There's so many amazing benefits to the social media based live streams and internet radio and all the rest of it. And of course now you know everything about an artist before you've ever seen them live or ever met them or anything like that. But back in the day, you just didn't know. So yeah, getting tapes was sick. Now, taking it away from like the London stuff, just want to bring it back to some of my personal experiences as a listener and as a fan. So if you listen to these recordings, like, no doubt you will hear people talking about Super Sunday, okay? Sunday, even though a lot of these stations would transmit certainly across the whole of the weekend, and some of them might be on like all week long. I don't know if they were 24/7 back in the day. I suppose it depended like how much the DTI were on their case. So the DTI, for anyone that's not aware of some of this terminology, the DTI is Department of Trade and Industry. So the DTI were an arm of the government or whatever, that department, who would basically have to go around tracking down pirate radio stations and shutting them down. So it was very much like a cat and mouse game. A station would be set up and they'd have their transmitters and all this kind of thing, and their microwave link boxes and all this equipment to try and send the signals. Like maybe people wouldn't necessarily have the transmitter wouldn't be in the studio, because if the DTI track down the transmitter, they go straight to the studio. Boom, you get busted. They come in, you could lose the equipment. People get records confiscated. I don't know if it happened a lot, but people did get arrested and people got fined and stuff like this. And I think people were even threatened with prison sentences. But they would have a microwave link which kind of like threw the signal out so that the transmitter wasn't in the studio, and it would make it harder for the DTI to actually find the location. They might find some of the equipment, but they wouldn't find the actual station. Okay, so yeah, the DTI were tasked with shutting down these stations, and I guess that had an impact on when stations could broadcast, because if you're on air and all of a sudden you just hear this hissing sound. I mean, it happened. I've been on pirate radio myself, and like 1 minute you're bubbling away, phone lines popping off, and then you're like, oh, the phone's gone a bit quiet, or someone might text in and say, mate, you've come off air, you've been hit, and it's just like that. It's just gone dead on the FM dial, and the DTI have like found the rig and they've cut it off, and that's it, you're gone. And then the station management have to hit up their rig doctor and go and get another rig and pay for another rig and get set up. Obviously, they might have spare ones sort of in stock, so to speak, but then they've got to go and find another location. So all of this stuff is going on in the background just to keep the stations going. So that obviously had a big impact on how regularly and how frequently a lot of these stations could broadcast. But what was I saying? Let me loop back round to the point. So I kind of lost my thread a little bit, but let me bring this back to the MC culture bit. So my personal experience. Oh yeah, I was talking. That's it. I was talking about Super Sunday. So Sundays was a special day for pirate radio, and it used to be so exciting. So again, I know I mentioned this in the last episode. By the way, if you've not listened to the last episode, that's my origin story, where I talk a bit about, just introduce myself as who I am. I'm obviously hosting a podcast to tell you a bit more about my background, give you a flavour of what I'm all about and why I love MC culture so much, and why and how Minded People was born. But my local station was Perception FM. Okay, and I'm super lucky because, like I said, I grew up in Hitchin in Hertfordshire. Now, forget all the London stations, your Calls and Rudes and Awakenings and all the other ones, by the way. There's loads more, so just big up everyone. But forget all London stuff. We were spoilt for choice just in the home counties. So check this out. In Hitchin, we had Perception FM was the main one. There were other stations as well, but we had Perception, big station. Stevenage, 10 minutes down the road, had Impact FM. Luton, 15 minutes in the other direction, had Raw FM. Bedford, 10 minutes in that direction, had Risk FM. And there is no doubt other stations that I've kind of forgotten about. So just within that small radius of like the towns that I grew up in, 4 or 5 stations, it was just sick. So yeah, my station, as in the one that I really was drawn to, was Perception FM. So a Super Sunday on Perception FM, I remember sitting there with my radio, get the tape out, and you whack it in, and yeah, boom, you're off, you're recording. And there were so many sick sets. But it was the MCs that caught my attention, and it was the MCs that brought that additional, it's like they brought the personality to the set. They brought that flavour to the set. And there were certain combinations on Perception FM that I loved and went really well together. So you had Phantom and Lydon. Now Phantom, big up Wayne, he's still out there now doing his thing with AMC. Them boys are absolutely smashing it. Big up yous lot, representing Luton and Dunstable, yeah, representing the ends. But Phantom and Lydon, big up Lydon, of course. They were sick. They had a wicked back-to-back style, and I just obviously I know these people now, and they're my friends. But back then, I didn't know them. I didn't have a flipping clue. I just some kid like from Hitchin, tuning in, going, "Wow, Phantom and Lydon, yeah, okay." So they were rinsing out. They sounded sick together, and then you had Boss and Wizard. Obviously, like the other people would come into the mix and different combos, but these are the 2 kind of back-to-backs that I remember. And Boss and Wizard sounded wicked together as well. Wizard, unfortunately, passed away. And yeah, he did a lot to really push pirate radio forward in the area, like I touched on in the last episode. He went on to set up a garage station called Prestige FM, which we'll probably talk a bit more about in a bit. Boss and Wizard back-to-back were absolutely sick. Just different vibes, different flows. So getting my Super Sunday tape on Perception was a really special thing, and I've still got some of these tapes. And anyone out there who has more Perception FM tapes, then do you know what I mean? Please hit me up, because I crave. Let's do some trades. Let's do some swaps. Whatever. I crave this stuff. So yeah, where are we up to? So really, from the MC side of things, I've talked a lot about pirate radio as a whole, but I do want to frame this through the perspective of what it's done for MC culture, because the pirate, regardless of the station and all the ins and outs of it, let's look at pirate radio as an arena for the MC. So when an MC is on pirate, it's a very different ball game to when an MC is in a rave or in a club, regardless of genre, really, because you're just playing a different role, aren't you? You're using different tools from the kit. When you're in a club, generally speaking, there needs to be an element of hosting going on. You're there to kind of connect the DJ with the crowd. You're there to keep the vibe of the night going, the party, the event, building up the peaks, taking people up and down, the kind of ebb and flow of the night, hyping the crowd up at the right points, and all this sort of stuff. Obviously, well, not obviously, but as far as I'm concerned, MCs also need to be providing that lyricism, that flow, because that's the extra. That's what takes things to the next level. So even in a live setting, yeah, of course, like I want to be hearing lyrics. I don't want to be hearing an MC all night long that only does the hosting part of it. But these are all different, vital and important tools that any decent MC will have in their toolkit, right? But on radio, it's different. There's similarities. You are still there to connect things, right? So in this instance, you're not connecting with a live audience that's in front of you. Your audience is the listener, of course. So part of the MC's role, like we've touched on, was to give the shouts and to give out the phone number and provide that element of connection between what the music that the DJ's playing and what the listener is hearing. And even that in itself is sick. As a listener, also someone that's been on pirate radio, you know, just like knowing that people are driving around town, you know, it's making me laugh. So I'm just thinking of Corrupt FM. But, you know, big up the driving crew and all this sort of stuff. Like, that's why Corrupt FM, people just say nothing, people just do nothing. I can never remember. That's why Corrupt FM is so good, because obviously it's a parody, but that's how it was. It's realistic. Like, it is, it's just a parody version of what actually happens. So, yeah, big up the driving crew, big up the 795 locked in, all that sort of stuff where you give out the 3 digits of the person's phone number. Again, like, I don't want to assume that people, especially if you're of a certain age or like you're outside the UK or something, maybe you don't even know what this stuff means. So like when people would text in the station, then you wouldn't necessarily have the phone number saved in the phone's phone book. After a while, like the regular listeners, they would get their names, their numbers saved with their name, so you could shout them out. But a lot of people would just phone in, yeah, big up so and so, yeah, we're driving around town, or whatever the message would read. And their number, you would read out the last 3 digits. So if the last 3 digits of their mobile number on the text or whatever was 795, then yeah, you'd be bigging up the 795, bigging up the driving crew. So even just hearing the MC do that, it still makes me so happy. Like, it's so nostalgic, and it's just a big part of this whole MC culture thing. Like, as funny as it is watching it on Corrupt FM, like, it's just how it was, right? So the MC would be playing that role, but this is the point I'm meandering towards, is that when you're on radio, you can go in. It's the perfect environment. I'd almost call it like the dojo, call it the training ground or the sparring session, because you don't have to worry about the crowd particularly. You don't have to look after the crowd like you kind of do in a live environment. You can just go in, bars galore. And obviously not all pirate radio studios, the sound wasn't always great. Sometimes, actually, to be quite honest with you, sometimes the sound could be super quiet because you're in a flat, in a tower block. They've got to keep the music down so it doesn't just draw too much attention from the neighbours and all this kind of thing, because obviously it is illegal. So the sound wasn't always great, but there were other times where the sound was pumping. I played in some stations where they were in industrial estates or just like little random places in the middle of nowhere, and you could turn the sound up, and that's when we could really go in. But regardless of my experience, I'll talk about my experiences a little bit more in a bit, but regardless of the station, it's where the MC can go in. Couple of you going back to back. What a pleasure. What a delight to be able to do that. And you can, the DJ can roll out and you can just go in on the mic, barring out, testing out your new rhymes. So it could almost become like like I said, the dojo. If you've been writing in the week and you've got a whole notebook full of new rhymes that you want to test out, pirate radio was the perfect place to do that. Because in the club, in the rave, it's not always suited, is it? And even if you are going in on the bars, can people really hear it? They're dancing, they're mash up, they're this, they're that. They might not be loud enough. You might not have a monitor, blah, blah, blah. You know, even at the best of times and with the best will in the world, maybe the lyrics don't hit quite in the same way. On radio, people are hearing your every word. You've got that clarity, and the listeners can hear what you're doing and they're vibing off of it. So you're there going back to back, and those special moments where the MC's passing the mic back and forth, like with X-Man and Herbsy, Skibber and Shabba, like with Navi and Ragga Twins, and just all the others. Yeah, they're just the ones that come to mind for me. There's obviously lots of others, and I'll get into the grime side of things as well in a minute, because I feel like some of the most legendary radio sets are on the grime side. But yeah, the passing of the mic, it's just amazing. That feeling, that essence is just super important to this whole MC culture thing. It's just undeniable. If you haven't experienced the recordings of these sets, like I said again, go and check them out, man. Pirate Radio Archives have got your back, believe. I've got no affiliation to that, by the way. I'm just a big fan of it. I listen to this stuff daily a lot of the time. So yeah, but then you're getting that instant feedback as well. The phone line's popping off. Just imagine this, late on a Friday night, you're in the station, you're rinsing out, DJ's going in, dropping the beats, couple of MCs, and then the people listening around town in their cars or whatever, chilling at home, smoking it up, whatever they're doing, they're texting in. So you're getting this feedback. And then you obviously had the one rings. Again, pirate radio terminology, like I don't want to assume that people just automatically know what this stuff even means. Like, big up the one ringing crew. So people might not have credit on their mobiles, or they don't actually want to speak to anyone. And to be honest with you, like when you're in the moment in the studio, you didn't always want to speak to people because you can't hear what they're saying and it kind of interrupts the flow. So text messages and one rings were definitely the way to do it. So just to explain what a one ring is, basically it's almost like the equivalent of the crowd going, hey, hey, putting their arms up in the air or shouting out their appreciation. When the one rings come in, someone phones the studio, then they hang up, and in the studio you're just getting these little blings on the phone, one blings, one rings, and you know people are showing their appreciation, and you can shout out their phone number. But obviously it was a fantastic way for people to call for a rewind. So the DJ drops a tune, the MCs are going in, and when the energy and that vibe is building, then it might be like, right, we want 10 one rings and we'll wheel this one up. You want the reload? Give us 10 rings. And then the phone's going ding, ding, ding. Yeah, so those moments, mate, they are amazing. And I feel so lucky that I was able to experience that on both sides of it as a listener and being the kid. I was the kid blowing up the pager. I mean, on the Super Sundays I was talking about with Perception, I remember hitting up the pager and you'd have to like speak to I'm sure it was like a person you spoke to, like, and you'd have to tell them what the message was. Yeah, this is Phil in Hitchin. I want to big up MC Boss. Rewind this tune or whatever. So a few years down the line, when like I had my own mobile and stuff like that, and you could just text or give a one ring, that was sick. So I'm there like with my mates. Yeah, this one's sick. Let's get the rewind. Bam, bam, bam. But then also I was on the other side of it as well, being in the studio, MCing, and just catching that vibe, the phone line blowing up, and you know people are loving it. Yeah, such good memories, man. And yeah, look, dare I say it, even though like doing radio these days is still sick, still fantastic, it's really hard to recreate that vibe. And I think the main thing that I think it is because people don't really listen to radio live anymore. So this was live. All of this pirate stuff was live. People are there in the moment listening. It's live feedback. It's shared energy and excitement. Whereas now, it's still sick. I'm not doing the whole like, everything was better back in the day. It's just that people tend not to listen. Why do you need to listen live to a radio show? You go on the app, you go on the SoundCloud, the whatever, listen back in the archives. At any point in time, you've got your pick of 100, if not 1,000 wicked radio shows. You can just hunt down your favourite artist. Whereas obviously then you flicked on the radio at the time and whoever was playing was who you had. Or you knew that, yeah, coming up next at 8 p.m. you've got XYZ. Do you know what I mean? So it was just different. But yeah, that energy, I don't think it can be recreated. Maybe it can. It can to a degree, but it's just different. But anyway, not getting focused on that whole nostalgia thing. It was just sick. So that's where the MC could really hone his or her skill. So it was a training ground. And then obviously MCs build up their fan base. Now we're in an era of getting follows and likes and shares and whatever and views. But really, the pirate radio MC was there to build his name and his fan base and his following by getting listeners on their show. Like I said earlier, people taping it, passing the tapes round. That was what it's all about. So, what do I want to talk about now? I feel like let's move away from D&B and jungle. Let's talk a bit about grime because, well, hold on, where does garage fit into this? So obviously from like 96-ish, there's always been garage pirates as well. amazing garage stations. And the role of the MC on a lot of these, you know, in that kind of mid-90s era, again, the MC in garage played a bit of a different role to what they did in drum and bass and jungle. A bit more of a host vibe, keeping the music bubbling. You know, the music was a bit more, could be a bit more funky, could be a bit more bouncy, bumping, soulful, whatever. There's all different types of garage, isn't there? In the same way that there's different types of all genres. But yeah, I feel that in those days, in a lot of the garage stations that I've gone back and listened to the sets, sometimes there isn't an MC, and of course, like in the drum and bass side of things, not every DJ wanted, not every set was about having MCs. Okay, I understand that, but I feel like there were possibly like less of an emphasis on the MCing thing on the garage side of things. Now, don't get me wrong, there's wicked sets out there of MCs that come to mind, you know, working with whoever the DJ might be, EZ for sure. Some wicked sets of EZ. No, I can't think of many of the other DJs now, but yeah, hearing your Rankin, your CKP, PSG, Viper, all of these guys just going and Be Live. Oh, sorry, big up Be Live, because Be Live was another one of the original Rude FM. We were talking about Rude earlier. Be Live, for anyone that doesn't know this, Be Live was Evil B, like he flipped the name around. So back in the day, he was on Rude FM as Evil B. You also had Rico, who went, obviously, people know who Rico is, right? But from Roll Deep, he was on Rude FM. I think they were on the original Rude, and then maybe went on Awakening after it went in that direction. Wiley, there's definitely sets of Rude or Rude Awakening where X-Man's got and those guys have got Wiley on the show. So yeah, you know, there's obviously a lot of crossover, but yeah, going back to the garage side of things. So the garage thing was a bit more of a hosting vibe, wasn't it? Even though there were lyrics, maybe it wasn't so built around MC culture. There's elements of it for sure, but it's coming a little bit more from that sort of house kind of mentality and house background. So that's why I feel like I haven't got a huge amount to say about the Garage Pirates. But don't get me wrong, I loved all that stuff at the time. I still love it. I love listening back to the UKG. And if anyone listening, like I've said, like has got stories, pirate radio stories that are MC focused, MC related stories around garage stations they might have been on at the time or they used to listen to where they were very like MC driven, then please do hit me up. I'll say the contacts again at the end of the episode or put it in the show notes as well. But yeah, and I was on garage stations myself. I mean, yeah, just as a quick segue, the first main pirate station that I had a regular show on was Prestige FM, and that was a garage station. We did manage to do a few little D&B bits on there, but that was in Letchworth. So again, like another station that was in our area. So lucky to have experienced this. And that was a wicked station. I know I mentioned it on the last episode, but just in case people haven't heard that, you know, Prestige FM had an amazing wealth of local MCs and DJs. But I remember being in the studio on multiple occasions, like on a Sunday, chilling there. And yeah, Principal would come down in sort of Northampton area, I think. And see, he was working with Sidewinder at the time. Sidewinder, big promotion based in and around Milton Keynes and Northampton, doing big raves. So Principal would come down with MC Juice Man. Obviously, Juice Man, big up, OJ, jungle legend, drum and bass legend. But he'd come down with Principal and do a garage set. And I mean, these guys went in. The flow, it was maybe a bit of like garage on a bit of a darker tip. Juice Man just, yeah, singing and barring over the garage was something else. We also had MC Dapper, who was from Luton. Used to roll with the Love Light crew and DJ TDK. Now he's gone on, I think, I think he's changed his name now to Daps. But Dapper's still out there mashing up the garage scene. amazing flow, super fast tongue. But yeah, Dapper would come in, and these guys, actually, I'm almost contradicting what I was just saying, because these guys over the garage were super lyrical, and Prestige and Risk FM in Bedford had its own set of MCs. In terms of the garage, then these guys were going in, and I MC'd over it myself. Now I've got a tape. I can only find one tape. Hopefully there aren't many more tapes out there of me MCing to garage. So this is like 98 probably, and yeah, let's just say I tried my best. I wasn't great, and the mad thing is, like, even though, like, in reflection, I hear myself now and I cringe, which I suppose, like, most MCs probably do, right, when you hear yourself back in the day. But yeah, I'm just like, basically almost just sounding like the parody that Corrupt FM do. I was that guy. Big up the ladies crew. Sounded a Prestige FM 107.2. All that sort of stuff. But that kind of 140-ish BPM, it doesn't really, I'm not that great at it. I love hearing other MCs barring at 140, and I think it's an amazing, it's a great tempo, and it's an amazing skill set to have when you can spit really tight in the 140 pocket. But yeah, let's just say it wasn't really working for me. But look, I had a show on there, and even at the time, this is the mad thing, I was locally in the local nightclub. I was doing sets with like EZ, Mike Roughcut, Lloyd, Ramsey and Fenn, whoever they were bringing down to the night. I was doing the sets, which is just crazy because there were way better MCs in the area than me that probably should have been on those sets. And yeah, like this, it's just made me think actually of an interesting story that I'll share with you, like only just because it's come into my mind, and I want these conversations to just be unfiltered. I am literally just sitting here, unscripted, talking about all these different things. But when I was on Prestige, the reason this made me think of it is I'm just sitting here now wondering, I wonder if that had anything to do with it. But there was a weird time on Prestige. So I got brought onto the station. MC Wizard ran it, owned it. Really good guy, man. He did a lot to push underground music and the MCing side of things in and around the area that I grew up in Hertfordshire, Bedfordshire, and like I say, sadly passed away. I think in and around like the year 2000 maybe, I can't remember. And he was doing big things at the time. He'd been taken on by Dream Team. He was working a lot with Dream Team as their MC. So yeah, big up, man. Really, really sad when these things happen, isn't it? So yeah, R.I.P. Wizard. But he ran Prestige, so he got me on the station, and I'm there. You know, I'm pretty new to this thing. I'm still cutting my teeth, but I certainly don't really have a particular style or sound. I'm just working it out, and I don't like the term imposter syndrome, to be honest with you, but I was feeling my own version of that at the time because I was kind of thinking, how have I got on here? I'm around these people that I see as like the sick MCs from the area. What am I doing here? But anyway, I did my thing. But the story that I'm telling, that I'm getting to here, is there was a weird time I went through on Prestige FM where the phone would ring and I would answer it, or someone would answer it and they'd say, yeah, Fokus, the call's for you. And I'm like, all right, okay. And it would just be people like just giving me threats. Yeah, Fokus, we're going to get you after the show. We know what car you drive. We're going to follow you. We're going to mash you up. Like all stuff like this. And it got quite dark, to be honest with you. And to this day, I don't know who was behind that. But I just kind of felt like I didn't really fit in with, hadn't earned my stripes. I don't know what it was. I don't know what made some of these people in the area not like me. What I was thinking about a minute ago and referring back to was, and I'm just thinking out loud here, is it because I was pretty crap on the mic, but I was getting these opportunities and maybe people thought, what's he doing here? Like, my brethren's better than him. Like, he shouldn't be on this station. I don't know what it is, man. Like, I never went out of my way to upset anyone, anything like that. Anyone that knows me knows I've got a good vibe about me, and I'm not a rude boy. I'm not into like giving it large to people. But anyway, this kind of thing was happening, and the phone would ring, and I get these threats, and yeah, it was a bit of a dark time at points. And then this kind of culminated. I don't know if this is related or not. I'm not saying it is, but not long after that, I was emceeing in a club in Hitchin, a club called Penthouse, for anyone from Hitchin who remembers back in the day. Big up the Penthouse crew. And something kicked off and I ended up getting bottled in the head. Someone smashed a bottle into my head, cut my head. Weirdly, I got thrown out of the club by the security. It's mad how you remember these things, isn't it? I had a white Nike polo top on, a white polo shirt with these blue little thin stripes going on it. And that's always been significant to me because it got covered in blood. And I know Rico has got a lyric about turning my nice white Nike top red, something like that, yeah. And it just makes me think, yeah, that happened to me. But anyway, I got bottled over a situation to do with the mic and not letting another MC on the mic and whatever. And I got thrown out. And then some of these guys are waiting for me outside the club, and I got licked as I walked out the door and punched in the head. And yeah, not a great time. So there was a weird era around some of my pirate radio endeavours. And so that story is just a little segue into, you know, life behind the scenes of a pirate radio MC in the 90s, right? But what was I talking about previous to that? Really about the garage thing. So whilst I feel like garage pirates were a bit more on the hosting vibe, certainly there are loads of examples of garage MCs going in, and even on Prestige, like getting to experience some of these MCs literally as being in the studio, just kicking back, listening to them, watching them. And MC Boss was another one. Boss was part of a crew called the Super Rago crew, and they were sick. Like, they were just mashing up the area, different flows. Like, Boss had a really unique style and vibe, and he was definitely, as far as I was concerned, he was like one of the best MCs in the area, whether it's D&B and Jungle or Garage. So I feel my next stopping point really is grime. So again, when we're talking about MC culture, and today we're talking about it from a pirate radio perspective, it is just undeniable that pirate radio and grime and MC culture just go like hand in glove. Absolutely. And again, this is what makes me so proud of what's happened in the UK. Like, we created this. You know, look at the way that pirate radio, what it was born from, like the sort of nationalised, government-based radio broadcasting, and then all of a sudden it leads into these like illegal pirate broadcasters, and then you get into the early 2000s, and then boom, grime has landed. Now, like I said a minute ago, a lot of the grime MCs would have no doubt cut their teeth in the jungle world. You know, if you hear interviews with Dizzy, Wiley, D-Double, already talked about Rico and all of them, man, all these legends, like, they started on jungle. But when the grime explosion of the early 2000s happened, I feel like this is where the pirate radio legends were really created. Because I was thinking about this earlier. If I was going to talk to you about legendary pirate sets, it's really hard for me to pick out jungle and drum and bass ones because, well, I suppose two things. Like, because I've been listening to that music for longer, because obviously it came before grime, there's just hundreds, if not thousands, more sets that I've got and listened to. So it's harder for me to pick it out. But I think this is the key distinguishing factor. There weren't cameras around at those times. So it's all audio based. So even though I could say, mate, listen to this set of like Kane and Skibbity, smashes it. Oh, Black Market and Hyper D, that set's sick. Like, they're audio sets. And that just leaves a different imprint, doesn't it? And I'm, in some respects, I almost think there's something even more special about having audio because you make up the images in your head. You visualize it in your head, don't you? Whereas when grime came along, it's being filmed. Whether it's with cameramen, obviously there were loads of people filming the grime sets and then putting out these wicked grime DVDs. Risky Roads, Practice Hours, Lord of the Mics, Lord of the Decks, and all the other ones that I can't remember now that are sick. But yeah, it was being filmed. So I just think it helps the grime sets almost feel and become more legendary because they're on YouTube. You've watched them a million times, Well, you might not have watched them a million times. I have. So I am going to, before the end of the show, I'm going to give certain recommendations for people to check out of some of what I would call legendary pirate radio grime sets that just embedded this MC culture thing, or that truly represent the essence of it. So, again, whilst there were loads of wicked stations, the two main pirate stations, when I think of MCs coming to the forefront, are, well, they're definitely, I was going to say, Deja Vu and Rinse. I'm already thinking, oh, hold on, there was this, there was that. So, but yeah, let me talk about those two, because the legendary sets that spring to mind for me tend to be based around those. And I mean, before we even talk about any specific sets, right, the vibe that, I mean, obviously I wasn't in the room, right? I wish I was. But when I watch back some of these DVDs and you're seeing the set being filmed at Deja Vu, for instance, the one I'm thinking of in my mind, there is like 15, 20 people in the room, packed into the room. Kind of grimy studio. The Deja Vu one was on the rooftop. So I believe it was above, I can't remember what club was under. Was it above Stratford Rex? Like, somebody let me know, hit me up and tell me. But I believe the studio, the Deja Vu studio, was on a rooftop. It was definitely on a rooftop above one of these clubs in Stratford. And yeah, just that essence. 15, and I'm not talking just like random people in the room. 15 MCs. Like, it's almost like a who's who. Like, really, every one of these people went on to become a big face of grime music, if not British street culture, way beyond grime. But you look at any one of these sets. So this particular one I'm talking about is one of the most famous clashes of that era, where it's Lethal B from More Fire crew, who obviously went on to become Lethal B or Lethal Bizzle in his own right. But it's Lethal B clashing Wiley. I'm sure no one needs me to break down who Wiley is. And it was caught on, which DVD is it? I think it's Practice Hours. But let me just grab my phone. Let me just quickly tell you, because I want people to, if you're listening to this podcast, you obviously have an interest in what we're talking about, right? So let me just quickly look up. So if you go onto YouTube and you just type in Lethal Wiley Clash, yeah, it is Practice Hours. Now Media Gang is, I believe they're the guys behind Practice Hours, the DVD. DVDs at the time were a big thing. They'd go into the pirate radios, they'd film it. Okay, so I've kind of got this on my phone. It's distracting me a little bit, so I might put it down. But type in Wiley versus Lethal B Practice Hours, and you'll see a 7-minute clip. So the clip in itself is sick. But I think you can access the whole flipping DVD on YouTube, the Practice Hours. Watch the whole thing, because it's just, again, it's just MC culture. Like, that's what it's all about. It's raw. It is the essence of it. But yeah, this set, look, even beyond Lethal and Wiley, who are the main focus, they're going back to back. Classic bars getting thrown. Lethal, I think this is must be before Pow had come out, but obviously his big hook bar was Pow, I'm lethal to beat. So he's rinsing that with different like variations of it. Wiley's going in. I think Wiley, he kind of like remixes the bar and throws it back at him. I think this is the one where he talks about your mum's got athlete's foot and all these disses, right? It's but you can tell that it's, even though they're clashing each other, there's still that sportsmanship. There's that kind of mutual respect, or even if there wasn't mutual respect, I don't know if they did respect each other, but it's not like there's a competitive edge to it, but there's still, there's something about where you can tell that they're not taking it super personally at that point anyway. Like, they're going back and forth, but there's a bit of a little smile on their faces. Please go and watch it. It is one of the most legendary pirate radio MC-based moments. But aside from the two stars of it, Lethal and Wiley, just look around the room. Look who is in that room. It is a who's who. Everyone, I think Kano pops up. D-Double's there, Flowdan, all these people gone on to just be massive. And that was the essence of grime pirate radio. Just a room full of people. And that there's something about that energy which is just magical. Now there's another classic set as well. This one, I think they ended up calling it the Conflict DVD. If you go on YouTube and look up Conflict DVD, but this is of course the Crazy Titch versus Dizzy Rascal. Now this one, it didn't look like the vibe was quite as sportsmanship-like, shall we say, as the other clash I just talked about. This one gets a bit out of hand. So, just go and watch it. I'm not going to try and necessarily break it down and do an analysis of it at all. But really, something happens. I think Dizzy's expecting Crazy Titch to pass the mic back to him, but Crazy Titch keeps hold of it for longer and goes into another bar. And then something kicks off and Dizzy comes with the classic line, I'm not a mutt. And it's getting quite physical. And again, just look around the room. Like, everyone in that room is like a grime legend. And, it spills out onto the rooftop. Like, the set gets kind of like, it goes beyond music. There's a bit of a fracas, shall we say. Don't know where that word came from. Spills out onto the rooftop. And then just from like hearing people talk about this moment, because obviously it's a legendary moment in grime and pirate radio and clashing and MC culture and all the rest of it. But they were on a rooftop and apparently there was like no sides. Like, what do I mean? Like, it would have been very easy for someone to like fall off the roof. It wasn't like there was a massive wall that was holding everyone in. Like the roof, you could have easily fallen off the roof, put it that way. So it's just a mad moment. So go and check these out. And then there's one other legendary moment when it comes to the grime on radio. Now, I can't tell you what... I'm annoyed because I don't know what DVD it's on and I can't tell you the station. I think both of those other two just then were Deja Vu FM. But... And actually, just again, all these little things come into my mind, so just bear with me. But I think the reason that Deja ended up having so many of the grime legends on there all the time, I think Rinse went through, I'm sure I've heard Genius and some of the others talk about this in interviews, but I think Rinse went through a period where the MC thing was getting a bit on top, or for whatever reason, they decided to not necessarily lock off the MCs, but hold back a bit on the MCs and not have so many MCs coming to all the shows and people just turning up in the studio. So I think a lot of the MCs went over to Deja. I think I'm right in saying that maybe Deja Vu were like, okay, cool. Well, like all of you lot can just come onto Deja Vu. So that's why there's so many legendary sets of like all these big MCs in the room all at one time. And that's something I crave and I'd love to try and recreate in and around my world of drum and bass. But that's probably a separate story that I'll touch on another time or might come back to later. But yeah, the other set, this one that I can't really tell you where to find it. You're going to have to scour the grime DVDs. But there's just this wicked set of Footsie and DEE, who were the Newham Generals. Obviously, again, both legends in their own right. And, look what DEE has done for British music culture, but MC culture. All of these guys, man, have taken it to the next level. It's just so sick. But this particular set, they've got one mic and it's a big shiny mic. It's not like a SM58 or like the typical mics that like industry standard mics people would use. It's just like this big shiny mic, and Footsie's holding it and he's doing the "you don't want a war with," and then he tips the mic towards Double's mouth and he just goes "who," and then he comes back, "you don't want a war with me." But the way they're just sharing this mic. And D Double is doing his D Double echo thing while like Footsie does the other bar, and they're just tipping the mic back and forth. Like, to me, you might think, why is he getting so gassed up about that? To me, that is everything when it comes to the whole point of this episode. Pirate radio and MC culture, that represents it. It's just amazing. So I feel like the grime scene just did big things to really push that out there. And the fact that it was filmed and you can now dip back into all these things on YouTube just makes it, well, I don't know if it makes it even more special, but it just means it's archived. It's been, I can't think of the word I'm trying to think of, but, you know, it's there now, isn't it? It's there forever. It's there forever. And the cameras, while there are little snippets of like jungle and D&B and stuff from back in the day, like I say, it was more of an audio thing. So what have I covered so far? I've given you like the history of the radio and talked a lot about different artists and stations. But I think, yeah, that point I really wanted to get across is that the pirate radio really allowed the MC to step to the forefront and have that moment to just let his lyrics off and not have to rely on the hosting and the crowd hyping, not rely on it, not have to focus on that, because you don't need to do that on the radio. So yeah, it was just this amazing dojo for the MCs to hone their craft. That's what I'm talking about, earning their stripes. That's what it's really all about. Now, you could argue, or you could say to me, what's that got to do with pirate radio? Like, you can do that on any radio station. And to be fair, I think that's a fair comment. Of course, we are blessed to have so many different radio stations available now. Like I said, I was at Kool FM last week. I never really got to go on Kool FM when it was a pirate. I did go there once, but yeah, it's certainly not in the sort of what I would call the legendary golden era. In terms of like that real proper gritty underground London vibe, I got to do some of the London ones a couple of times. I definitely went on Rude a few times when it was in the Tower Blocks, and I remember doing a show with a friend of mine, Butler. Again, the guy's so sad to have to keep saying this, isn't it? But R.I.P. Mark Butler. Yeah, he was. Let me just quickly just touch on Mark Butler for a second. Now he's come up because he took me to Rude FM, and this was a proper Tower Block one, like late on a Friday night, going into this squat. I was just like, what is going on? And there's just people, kind of like moody people, like not moody people, just people sort of loitering about and stuff. And I was quite young at the time. I was a teenager, and you're sort of thinking, wow, this is proper. But yeah, Butler took me along to that. And it's sad, man. Like, I have no doubt in my mind that Butler, he was a few years older than me, but if Mark was here now, he loved his music, man. He would still be on the music thing. I honestly don't have any doubt that I'd probably be working with him. He was a very dedicated to his DJ craft, very knowledgeable about music. And I think he's someone that, you know, we'd have kind of stuck together and we'd be doing sets together and all that kind of thing. And he introduced me to a lot of the things that I've been talking about as well. I know he was he'd been playing on Rude FM for a while, so he kind of like, whilst Kool FM was the one that everyone was talking about and had the tapes of, like Mark Butler introduced me to the world of Rude FM, really put it on my radar. And it's really sad, man. Like, Mark had a few things going on in his life, and he actually got stabbed, and that's how he passed away a long time ago. So yeah, big up Mark Butler. Enough respect out to you, man. And we went to Renegade Hardware nights together, and he loved all this stuff as well. Like, he loved all the MC culture. We used to have a good laugh, and yeah, big up Butler. But I can't even remember now why I started talking how Butler came into it. It must be something to do with going to Rude FM. But yeah, I was talking about why this whole essence of the conversation that I'm having. Why do I feel that it's pirate radio related and not just radio related? Because we're surrounded by all these amazing stations, aren't we? The long-standing stations are still going, your Cools, your Rinses, and they've got these fantastic studios kitted out with amazing equipment, amazing apps. You know, you can go into look how sick. Go into the Kool FM app now. You've got an A to Z, and Rinse as well. You've got an A to Z, every artist you can imagine from all the main sort of genres that play, you know, UK kind of. Well, not UK, but like street not street music, what am I trying to say? Like bass music for the different genres, for your 140, your drum and bass, and all the other sort of bits in between, right? And you can pick any time of day, any artist you want to listen to. You go to the studio, amazing studio, kitted out with all the latest equipment. And the same with other stations. I've got to big up Thames Delta, big up Claire and Dorian, doing an amazing job at Thames Delta Radio. So when you watch these things online, it's like it's a visual experience now as much as it is an audio experience. When some of these radio stations have like their green like green screen studios, then it allows them to do these amazing visuals. So for the viewer, because it's not necessarily a listener, is it? It's more like a viewer. When you view the sets on there, it's just mind blowing. It looks amazing. It's like the production level behind it, proper equipment, radio mics, wicked sound systems in there. It's amazing. So of course, MCs can still congregate and go on these stations and flex out and do their thing. And of course we do. Like, I'm very, very keen, as is a good friend of mine, Visionobi, big up Rich, getting MCs together in a room to come with that pirate radio mentality is something that's super important to me. So it isn't necessarily, of course it ain't, it's not only pirate radio that can create this. I just think it played such an important role in putting MCs where they are now. Okay, that's undeniable. But it doesn't mean it still can't be done. I just feel that there's maybe, I mean, things change, obviously, right? There's just maybe that slightly less exciting. Slightly less exciting, I think. And that's no disrespect to all the amazing stations out there, ones that I've mentioned, ones that I haven't mentioned. You just, and I think, I'm possibly repeating myself, but because you just, I don't know, man, you don't have that kind of like people like one ringing the phone and the phone line popping off. Like the phone line used to run red on some of these shows. It would just be going crazy. Now, but again, on the flip side, when you go on stations that are now on the internet, you've got internet chat rooms. The show is immediately archived, so people that were at work or couldn't listen to the show at the time when it was live can go back and listen to it at their leisure. So that is sick. So really, this isn't me comparing the two at all. What I'm keen to do, and for other people to do as well, do it so I can listen to it because I'm a fan, is let's create, not recreate, because it ain't about looking backwards. Let's create that exciting pirate radio style, mentality and vibe on the fantastic stations that we now have around us in 2025. And, who knows where radio and broadcasting could go over the next few years. But that's something I'm really keen to do. Like I just started saying, myself and Visionobi have been doing little link-ups like this. Rich has done it on his Kool FM show. I've done some things on Thames Delta. We've got people together. Also got a big up Peas and Excess. They're my boys. We've been doing a little thing purely just for fun called Fokus FM, where we go in the studio and one take a set. Do you know what I mean? We're not there messing about, like trying to get record it all on different channels and get all the levels sounding perfect so we can master it and all this. Nah, we just record it raw and recreate this pirate vibe. Now, the funny thing with the Fokus FM, which is what we've called it, and the concept behind the Fokus FM is it's a limited edition download. So like back in the day, let me just touch on this quickly. Back in the day, of course, like if you didn't have the tape of the pirate radio set, how else are you going to get it? You've got to get the tape from source. And if you don't have it, you can't listen to it. So we were thinking, like, in this age where everything's so readily available, does that make it a bit more disposable? Yeah, maybe it does, because you're sport for choice. Like, it's almost hard to decide what to listen to. So we thought, what about if we did something where we record this set, pirate radio style, fling it down, and then it's still digital. I'm not trying to say it's only available on a tape cassette. Actually, do you know what? I might do that. But it's a download link, but it's limited. So there's only the last one that we did, for instance, there's only 35 downloads available to the whole world. And people people have to hit us up to get the link. And we try and make it quite hard for people to actually get the download, because we want it to have some value. Like, put a little bit of work in, people. Like, we're sport for choice, yeah? So, like, put some work in to get the music that you want. So they have to go on a desktop, because it doesn't work from mobile, get the link, download it, and do some, jump through a few other hoops. You could argue we've made it too hard for people, but we're just doing it for a bit of fun. But it gives that value and creates that excitement. You know, have you got the latest set? Have you got the latest one? Because that's what it used to be like. So I think it's all about doing what we can do, fusing together these amazing stations and the equipment and clarity of sound that we've now got available to us as MCs and DJs and performers, but doing it in a way that creates a bit of a buzz and a bit of an excitement. And I'm all about getting multiple people in a room at one time. Because like I said, when you watch back those old Deja Vu sets, just the flipping 15, 20 people just popping off, and an MC does a certain bar and everyone's like, hey, pull up that. That's what it's all about. And I think that is what pirate radio did for MC culture. Do you know what? There's more I could talk about. There's other stories I could give. Have I missed out anything in particular? I don't think so. I think the final thing for me is that I feel there's a bit of a missing link for me. And this is where I'm reaching out to the listeners to help me with it, really, for future episodes, is that I could talk to the cows come home about D&B jungle, garage, grime. I'm a big hip-hop head. And look, let's have it right. Minded people, for the love of MCs across the musical spectrum, I find it hard to talk about hip-hop and rap in a way that I can with the other genres, because I haven't lived it as much. I'm a listener, you know, whether it's from Wu-Tang Clan back in the day through to High Focus now and all the amazing stuff in between. I listen to it. But for me, it's more of like a album mode. I listen to the albums, and I'd love to know more what exists out there. Like, for instance, let me cut to the chase. What hip hop pirate radio stations were there? I've got a feeling like Itch FM. Itch FM, was that pirate? Not entirely sure, but I've got a feeling it was pirate. So I know there's Itch FM sets that have got that underground essence, hip hop ciphers. I know that stuff exists. What other underground hip hop and rap pirate stations were there back in the day? So that's a question directly out to the listeners. Please hit me up in the comments. hello@mikemindedpeople.com is the email. @mikemindedpeople on Instagram. You can DM me on there. Let me know about that side of things. I'd love to speak to people that have got an experience, hip-hop MCs on pirate radio. That would be amazing. And because I feel, like I said, like hip-hop for me personally is more of an listening experience as an album, yeah? But this is going to be my final thought, then I'm going to wrap up with this. So many of my favourite MCs, I just prefer hearing them on radio, because this is the pirate radio episode, right? And I don't always know if, like, it's a tricky one here, isn't it? Like, I will talk more about this in the future, the whole thing of, like, being an MC versus being an artist, and the role of the MC and how MCs are artists now. We've become artists, right? But there are MCs that I love, but when they put an album out, I don't know if I love it that much. I respect it, I support it, I play it, buy it. Come on, part of this culture, I'm here to support it. But sometimes you cannot replace hearing that MC just going in on a radio set. And yeah, that for me is that's the real magic of radio and pirate radio. And I just think it's where the MC really gets to shine in a way that showcases their skills and their flow and their energy and what they're all about. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you for listening to this episode. Please connect with me. Check the show notes out for how to do that. I've said it a few times in the episode. Don't want to keep saying the same thing, but let's create a community around this And I keep saying it, guest episodes and interviews are on their way. It's not always going to be me sitting here in my studio talking to myself, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I'm a fan of this. I'm passionate about this. And yeah, I thank you for your time. Big up all my mic-minded people. I'm out. Hey, it's me again. Don't stop listening yet. I need to squeeze this on to the end of the episode. So what happened is this. I recorded the episode yesterday, woke up this morning and realised that I'd left out a really important era on pirate radio. And it's the era between the garage bit and the grime bit, let's say. It's almost like the precursor to grime, where the garage crew became a massive, massive thing. And this is so important to British MC culture that I had to just jump back on and just quickly squeeze this bit in at the end. So really there were 3 or 4 crews that was what they did for the culture is so important that really stood out. So you had So Solid on Delight FM, So Solid crew. Most people will know So Solid, of course, because they went into the charts with 21 Seconds and just absolutely blew up and became part of popular culture, really. But I remember getting the first ever tape of So Solid. Well, I had this tape. My friend Jermaine gave it to me. One side was So Solid crew on Delight FM, and the other side was Heartless crew on Mission FM, 2 wicked London stations. Now, So Solid, let's do that bit first. So Delight FM was a station that I believe was owned by Mega Man, or it was more or less So Solid station. And this tape was just a real game changer because not only was the music that they were MCing over was very different, it wasn't that kind of traditional, in inverted commas, garage sound anymore, but it wasn't what we came to know as grime. It's somewhere in between. Dark garage, people called it, had a bit more of like a 2-step breakbeaty element to it, but still that kind of garage essence and flavour. But yeah, Mega Man, Romeo, Asher D, Neutrino, Swiss, Harvey, there were so many of them, and the way they combined their flows together was sick. Back-to-back style, but there was melody to it. It was smooth. It was slick. And yeah, had to make sure that, even though I'm just going to kind of cap it at that, had to make sure that Delight FM and what So Solid did on there got a mention on this episode. And then, yeah, like I said, on the other side of the tape was Heartless crew on Mission FM. I've lost this tape, and even though there's loads of sets of both of these crews on YouTube and stuff, I cannot find this particular one. But yeah, this set was sick. So Heartless crew, obviously DJ Fonty, and then Mighty Mo and Bushkin, they brought that kind of sound system flavour, that melting pot style to garage, the Crisp Biscuit mix, and they would obviously play they would of course play bashment and other styles of music and jungle, because that was their roots, that's what they came from. But yeah, the way that Mighty Mo and Bushkin kind of flipped it on the mic, catchy, melodic hooks, bit of singing, but then they could also go in and just chat that kind of bashment style. That was really important to the culture as well. So Heartless crew had to get a mention. And of course, like, if you haven't heard these any of these sets before, then jump online. Like I said, Pirate Radio Archives has got your back on this. Untold sets on there. And then super important on Rinse FM was Pay As You Go Cartel with God's Gift, Major Ace, Wiley, Flowdan was sort of part of it for a while. Who have I not just mentioned? I can't think now. But Pay As You Go Cartel was huge, and really, as people probably know, like, they gave birth to Roll Deep in the end. Things started to sort of change around a little bit at some point. Sort of Dizzy Rascal got introduced into the mix, and then Maxwell D was another important member of Pay As You Go Cartel, and then they kind of transmuted, if you like, and became Roll Deep. Some people left, other people joined, and Roll Deep crew was formed, who were obviously so important to the birth of grime, with other MCs coming into the mix like Scratchy, Manga, Roachy, Rico. So yeah, but without losing the thread of what I was saying, Pay As You Go Cartel on Rinse FM really did a lot for that crew-based, MC-based garage sound. And then also you had More Fire crew. I feel like they were on Deja Vu, but maybe I've got that wrong. I'm not sure what station they represented necessarily. But yeah, More Fire crew, Lethal, Ozzy and Nico. Also, you know, they had that crossover appeal because their tune Oi went into the charts. And go and check it out, because it isn't that typical garage sound, but people hadn't really started calling it grime yet. But yeah, I just needed to throw all this stuff into the mix, because yesterday I was talking about kind of saying how garage on pirate radio didn't necessarily have that lyrical based MC element, and it certainly did. So excellent. I'm really glad that I've just jumped back in the studio, got that off my chest. I'll be able to sleep easy tonight. So big up once again. Thank you so much for your ears. See you next time.